Welcome to Gapology Radio with your hosts Mark Tinas and Brian Brokoff, authors of the leadership development books Gapology, IMBAR, and Speed of Purpose. At Gapology, our purpose is to help leaders achieve their greatest potential. To learn more about our groundbreaking books and training services, visit our website, gapology.org.
Hey everybody, welcome to Gapology Radio. Mark and I are super excited for tonight's episode. We've actually been waiting for this night since last October when Mark and Judy Shulock hosted an amazing Gapology workshop for a team of leaders in Denver, Colorado. Mark immediately called me at the airport to tell me about one of the standout participants. He was super engaged, interactive, and he immediately connected with the Gapology methods in ways that we love to see as Gapology coaches. It's been a long time in the making, but we finally have aligned our schedules to have Patrick Gonzales on the show tonight. So welcome, Patrick.
How are you doing today, Brian?
I am wonderful. Excited to have you on the show.
Well, I'm excited to be here, so I will share all my experiences that I had with you.
Love it. Love it. So let's kind of do it like this. So before I turn it over to Mark, who's going to really guide the conversation, let me give our listeners a little bit of a background on Patrick. So Patrick was born in Nuremberg, Germany, an Army brat, and grew up in Monte Vista, Colorado, and then moved to Morris, Minnesota for 14 years, which is actually very interesting. So Colorado and Minnesota, which totally connects with Mark and I. So Mark lived in Colorado for many years, and I grew up in Minnesota. So super small world. So he, let's see, Patrick also attended the University of Minnesota and the University of Phoenix, where he completed his bachelor's degree in business. He's worked for Frito-Lay since the year 2000, where he started in sales, but then he's worked in many other roles, first as an individual contributor and then as a leader. He loves sports, reading, traveling, and cooking. And I love this. So he shared a couple of his favorite quotes, which I love this first one. So lack of preparation on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part, which I love that quote. That one's fantastic. That's by Ron Lepezi. And the other one is be where you are, which I love that. I love that. And so Patrick, we'd love to have you on the show. We're excited that you're here.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate the introduction. Yes, I have that one is one of my favorite quotes as well, because I have a lot of people that don't plan, but they want to slide it onto my plate so I can take care of their lack of preparation. So yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we've all experienced that for sure. So let's see. So Mark, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, Mark, how you doing again? Nice to hear your voice again.
Yeah, I miss you. When I first met you, you were so excited about Gapology. What was that excitement based in? What struck you about the book?
Well, I will tell you that I am an avid reader, and I was on I don't want to call it maybe a retreat or whatever. We were coming back on the bus, and I'm reading this book, and everybody's trying to get my attention. And I told them, hey, I don't have time. I got to read this book. I got these guys coming to speak tomorrow and stuff like that. So I got to make sure I'm ready for it. And I literally could not put the book down. I read it. I suggest everybody just read it, just to absorb what's in there. But then you have to go back and underline it and highlight it. And that's what I did. I just could not put it down. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, one of the things we recommend often is that people read the executive summary first, which is very rare. So we created it at the back of Gapology, an executive summary, which takes an hour and a half to read. And it gives you a foundation in Gapology before you read the book. It's quite interesting.
That was one of the main things that really caught my eye after I was done reading the book. It was just that executive summary. I've never seen something that was put, chapter by chapter and exactly what you need in a condensed version. You get to read the story about Maddie and all these other things, but yet this gives you the nuts and the bolts of everything. And it was just so easy to read, and the simplicity of understanding a gap that there's gaps, you just did not know how to frame it up. And that helped a lot.
Yeah, what we found is that a lot of leaders need that executive summary. Maybe they're going to do a meeting tomorrow. So they know that the meeting addresses gaps. They can quickly go to the executive summary, find their talking points for the meeting, and present that to the group. So it really is a way of simplifying Gapology. And it's at the back of the book. And I don't know how many pages it is, Brian, 23, I think. And it just makes Gapology work ongoing. And you go back to it over and over again. So Patrick, how did you first apply Gapology to your team and to yourself?
Well, for myself, I mean, everything, I think people have a hard time, hey, there's business and then there's personal. But I think going through this book, you realize that in your life, you have gaps, right? I mean, I've been married almost 25 years, and I saw some of the things that why my wife and I were probably struggling a little bit is because I was the gap. So, I mean, I wasn't communicating at the right level with her for her to understand why I wanted to say, maybe eat dinner by 6:30. She didn't understand. It wasn't her big deal for her. But for me, just explaining why I needed to eat dinner by 6:30 because I go to bed early. I don't like to be full, blah, blah, all these things. And it was just never explained to her until I was able to put it in. There was a gap there for us and an understanding of what we were trying to get to on a common ground, right? So
wait a minute. So you're telling me that Brian and I have totally missed the fact that Gapology is a marriage counseling book?
I'm telling you.
Oh, wow.
So good.
How did we miss that?
No, I mean, everybody's got to realize you have gaps in your marriage. I mean, you got to figure what that gap is. And you've been arguing about something for how long, but why were you arguing? There was a gap in the communication. So there is always a gap in personal lives, right? So, and I think marriage is a great way to look at it and to try and understand each other's side, to understand that whose gap is it, right? It's usually mine.
So Patrick, I've got a simple rule. Whenever there's a gap, the first thing I do is look in the mirror, and there I find it generally.
100%. 100%. And that's in my, and that's what I got the most out of the book, let me tell you. So is that I'm usually the biggest gap no matter where I go. And that's what people have to understand. That's what people have to understand. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Most of us are too arrogant maybe to admit it. And it really is a big deal. Most leaders create most gaps. And once they learn that, they become extremely successful as a result. So how did you apply it to your team?
Well, that's a great segue to one of my top 3 takeaways kind of thing, right? The first one is look in the mirror. I am usually the biggest gap. And my team, I started realizing, why are they not executing or performing at the level I wanted to? And it was usually me. The next one was I have a young team teaching, right? Teachable points of view. Always be ready for the moment to give them a nugget or a 2-minute conversation. You know what I mean? Just sit there and be able to help them in a situation that might get them through an understanding to help deal with a situation that they're in. And the other one is a rhythm, right? Consistency in sending the right message. I mean, those are some of the bigger takeaways that I really, really got out of listening to you and Judy, and then also from the book as well. And that solidified what I was doing.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, leaders are teachers. Great leaders, let's say, are teachers. And it's an ongoing thing. It never ends. So you're always looking for that moment, as you pointed out, to give your team that lesson that maybe they don't know. I personally grab a flip chart or a whiteboard and, start charting it out and try and go into teaching mode. And Brian and I found that the most successful leaders were teachers. They considered themselves teachers. They spent most of their day teaching others. And because of that, their team was highly successful and the results were off the charts. And they were in that group. No, that was great. Great stuff, Patrick. Thank you for that. So what gaps did you find as a result of reading Gapology? What kind of gaps did you find? I understand a lot of them were yours, but help those that don't understand it. What gaps you found?
Well, what we found out that was we created a staff meeting every Tuesday, right, to have that rhythm. And we had these, and these meetings are kind of like the W, right, or the V, right? You got a beginning and an end, and you got to come on a high note and end on a high note, and then have all kind of the meat in between, right? But we started having these conversations, and it just started drawing everybody out of, well, I can't get this done, I can't get that, whatever. So we started making these lists and getting them. So where were we challenged? We were struggling with training. There's too many gaps because we have like what's called DOT rules and all this stuff for transportation and all this stuff. And we have to make sure that people are trained and they're following all the rules of the Department of Transportation. And we're figuring out we have these gaps. And why do we have these gaps? Well, it came down to the habit ladder, right? So, we have communication, understanding, agreement, practice, and habit. We were sitting there, were we communicating? Well, that was the first step, right? We needed to communicate better. Once we got those communication gaps closed, then we went to the understanding. Did they understand why we needed to go do this? And drivers and people and admin understanding that we need to make sure we're buttoned up because we are audited on how we do our processes. And we did not do a very good job last year. And you guys came in at the right time because you came in, we just had failed an audit. So this was a great spot for us to be able to put some of these plans in place. Then we had to get the agreement, right, from all the drivers, from the admin, making sure that they agreed upon it. Well, that is about where we're getting to the agreement. And now we're starting to practice. So it's not a habit yet, but I'm telling you, we are by far further ahead than where we were before we started because of the habit ladder.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so impressed with your knowledge of Gapology. So you've read the book, you've applied the book. The habit ladder is one of the biggest things that a number of people take away from reading Gapology. And it's amazing. If you simply apply the habit ladder to what you're doing, it works. And whatever you're doing will be more successful when you apply it. But that was quite an impressive recap, Patrick. I'm very, very impressed. Brian, I want to pause for a minute because I know you got a 1,000 thoughts. What are your key takeaways so far from Mr. Patrick Gonzales?
Yeah. I'm jotting down so many great notes here, Patrick. Thank you so much for sharing your learnings already. So a few different pieces I've got written down here. I love the, looking in the mirror. I love the TPOV, which to me, so, we've taught this, hundreds of times, and TPOV usually isn't one that people say, hey, this is something that made a big impact in my life. What I'd really love to find out is what types of teachable points of view have you created?
So for me, what I do, so I have, overall, I have 100 people that report through and other people and everything else, but I have 4 direct people that manage over that 100 people, right? So I have my right-hand person who's my USL, who is like by far the best thing for me because we balance each other out, right? I'm high energy. He's more grounded, all this stuff. But then I have 3 young leaders, and him and I are constantly having talking points. Hey, how do we get them to the next level? We are not talking about managing people. We're talking about leading people because we got to get out of the managing stage and lead people. So we are constantly looking at points in a day, throughout the day, and they could be 1 minute, they could be 5 minutes. We could be all huddled in a room and talking something that happened. Hey, how do we handle this better? Or how do we go accomplish what we need to get done in this aspect of what we're doing today? So throughout the day, it's constant, always looking ahead of how can we go have a teachable moment with these young leaders. So throughout the day, that's what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And like Mark said, you know, the most successful leaders are teachers. So that's great that you're developing these quick, easy lessons, looking for the moments to be able to just pull someone aside and, you know, give them some sort of teaching moment, allow them to share back with you. So it's kind of a cycle as far as, you know, learning. So I love that. So great job there.
Yeah, you know, the best teacher, my wife was a teacher for 30 years. So you know who's getting taught at home all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's been teaching me ever for 25 years on how to be a better leader as well. So
she sounds
I give her all the
fantastic.
credit. I give her all the credit. That's for sure.
That's great.
Hopefully, Patrick, you've given her a copy of the book.
She is the book.
She is the book. So on the teachable points of view, I carry with me 34 teachable points of view. And whenever I'm in a situation where maybe I'm in a meeting or on a visit with someone and they need that, I bring it out and teach them. And those 34 are pretty amazing. So I love what you're saying, Patrick. And again, carry your teachable points of view with you and be ready to deliver them at any time, because it can totally change everything for the individual you give it to. Great leaders are teachers. So if you had to summarize, Patrick, your key takeaways from Gapology, what would they be? Give us a few.
What I would tell you as my takeaways, it is a journey. It is not going to happen overnight. Some things aren't going to happen in 6 months. But what I will tell you is that it does work and you have to believe in it. But before you hold someone else accountable, please make sure to look in the mirror and see if you are the gap, not them. Because that literally changed my view on how I lead people.
Wow. We need to do a t-shirt on that, Brian.
I think we actually have one that says "Look in the mirror."
Oh,
Yeah.
where's it available?
Gapology.org.
Oh, it's so true, though. I mean,
Yeah.
And most leaders haven't stepped up, or they don't know that they really are the gap, or they've created the gap. And once that's realized, great success, great results come from that. So what advice would you have, Patrick, for leaders that like you were asked to read this book? You know, they may not read a book, I don't have time for that, you know, I'm busy, you know, that kind of thing. What advice would you have for them?
I mean, I run across people that don't like to read either. Hey, sometimes you're not a reader, use the audio portion of it, because you know what, it's still coming into you. You're still looking and you're still learning about Gapology. The one thing I will tell you that really helped me understand was it's okay to treat people differently, and focus on the top 10% and focus on their strengths and their gifts, because that was another game changer for me. Because reading this book, this is the things that you get out of this book. It's an easy read. It flows well. It's a story about Maddie. And I'm telling you, it's just refreshing to know that you can put the words to what Gap really is. And I did not know that before I read this book.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, one of the things we tried to do in each chapter was to teach the Gapology side of it, but then tell a story through Maddie Ferguson's lens. So she tells a story about how she applied what we just talked about. And it tries to bring it to life, I guess is the simplest way to put it. And that it's unique in that fact. Gapology is unique. Every chapter has a Maddie story on purpose, because it just brings whatever we've taught to life, gives you a real life example. The stories that Maddie tells, Patrick, I don't know if you know this, they're all true. They all actually happened. So they aren't just made up stories, they're reality. I think Brian says we changed the names to protect the innocent, something
That's
like
right.
that. But,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I saw you guys plug yourself into the story every once in a while,
here and
so
there. Yeah, here and there.
Yeah.
Gapology was life-changing for both Brian and I as we went through a decade of evolution of learning. It took a long time to realize that we were the Gap. That's not easy for most leaders. And once we realized that, we could begin helping others, and everything sort of snowballed from there. But
so one key point I want to get across is that the learning process never stops. So Mark just shared that, as we go through and we teach it to different people, the interesting thing is that we learn as well. So every time I've conducted a Gapology workshop or a coaching call or anything, oftentimes I walk away with even more than what I brought to the table. Because of people like you, Patrick, that can share these things, these amazing stories and how it impacted you and how you're applying it and things you're struggling with. So I think it's always important as leaders that we're open to hearing people's feedback, asking their feedback, seeking feedback. Don't just let it happen, really seek it, really look for it. That's how we create these teaching organizations, when we bring something to the table, but we remain open to hear from others as well. I thought that was something really key. The other piece is, there are different learning types. So people do learn in different ways. There are the visual learners who like to read. There are the auditory learners who like to listen to things, and we do have it on Audible. We have Gapology on Audible. We also have these podcasts, for instance. So you can gain the information around Gapology through these different methods. And then we have those kinesthetic learners like yourself, Patrick, that like to go to a workshop, sit down, nuts and bolts, get down to business. Let's figure out your real gaps. Let's work through it together as a team. That's the power of the Gapology workshops as well. So I just really want to throw out those couple additional thoughts. I love what you're sharing, Patrick, and what you've learned from Gapology. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with the workshop itself that Mark and Judy helped to facilitate.
So for me, the workshop just kind of put the book into place, right? So we got to learn the habit ladder. We got to learn, all the ladders that are in the book and how you can apply them. You learned about, the importance and action and just all these, everything just comes together when you are able to have conversation amongst people. Because here's what I will tell you, when I got there, I think it applies to everything, is that even when Mark and Judy were there, they were reading people in the audience, right? And they took the 10% that are trying to take out of the teaching and tried to pour more into them, because they're not the 80% or the 80%, but it's the 10% that they take away the 10% that are trying to learn, right? So you're always looking at the A and the C to trying to get the C up, right? So I just appreciated their time that they took. And, even Judy's story with Wild Wings, right? And what she did with that group of people and everything else. And everybody has a story. Learning through this, learning what a gap really, really is extremely, extremely important to people to understand. So again, it's not something that you're going to go and do overnight and learn overnight. It's continuous processes that you have to put in place to continue to be better at what you're doing.
I congratulate you on your leadership in that workshop. Patrick, somewhat of a senior leader within the group, spoke often, would stand up and speak to the entire group and sort of give his impressions and where he was at. And that had a big impact on everyone in that room. Probably 50 people or so were in the group, and Patrick would stand and talk. And it was quite amazing. One of the things that we do in the workshop is we have, as they're learning Gapology, we have the group identify what knowledge gaps they have discovered in that moment, and then what importance gaps they've discovered, and what action gaps they've discovered. And then we culminate with what they're going to do about it and how they're going to apply the root solutions and close the gaps in their team and in their leadership, et cetera. And Patrick had incredible insight into that team and how they needed to change in order to achieve the great results that were there for them. So it was a great day spent with Patrick and team there.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. So, I mean, I can't tell you that a few of us at the plant right now are still, we're still implying it, and we're still, and we've had other workshops after the fact to make sure that we're not losing track on some of our gaps that we can go close in our facility.
Oh, that's great.
Love
That's great. Patrick, anything else you would share with the leaders that have joined us that don't know Gapology like you do?
It's all about making yourself better so you can develop better leaders. If you don't develop yourself, I'm just telling you, you are shortchanging people that are under you. So make sure you're doing the best version of you so you can make better leaders.
Love that. Wow.
Write that down, Brian.
Yep. I was just scribbling that down. That's excellent. Well, Patrick, I would just like to jump in and say congratulations on your success with your improvements that you've been working on, with your connections to Gapology and applying what you learned, repeating that, doing your follow-up workshops. I love that you're doing that. And most of all, congratulations just with the people, right? So yourself with your team, developing your teachable points of view, creating a teaching organization. I think that's just amazing. So I just want to say congratulations there.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Great work.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Stay in touch. We'll talk to you all later.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. That'll do it from here. If you'd like to learn more about our Gapology workshops, like the one that Patrick attended, head on over to our website, gapology.org. And feel free to reach out to us either through the contact link there, or you can even send us a direct email to contact@gapology.org. Everyone have a fantastic week. Talk to you soon.
This has been a Gapology Institute production. Visit us at gapology.org.